You don't give a fuck when you land or not, just let him go. Don't worry about you, you're gonna be a shitty fight, but you gotta let punches go.
Last round.
You can't wait until they get, if you miss it, bang, go right back. And don't take 30 seconds to start another fight.
Alexander, I'm the best ever. There's never been anybody like me. I'm Sonny Liston, I'm Jack Dempsey. There's no one like me. I'm from Nairclaw. There's no one that can match me. My style is impetuous. My defense is impregnable.
Look at that. Look at that combination. And the turn.
I kept telling him he had no punch, he couldn't hit, he's swinging like a sissy, he's missing, let me see your bumps. I hadn't started damping yet. A tremendous sensational first round, and Hearns gets hurt. Hearns got stunned. Pacquiao was stunned early in the round. Great first round. Incredible. Perhaps one of the best in middleweight history.
That black guy, he hits hard.
Hands of Fire Boxing Talk is back, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode. Man, are we coming off? We are coming off a pretty breaking news story that went out. What was it? Maybe Friday that it was announced. Ladies and gentlemen, Gennady, Triple G Golovkin, the 160-pound middleweight champion, really more recognized champion, unified champion at 160 pounds, was announced Friday afternoon that he will be facing welterweight champ, IBF champion, Brook, in a Canelo Khan-esque announcement. I mean, really just came out of nowhere. And coincidental enough, same type of matchup. You have a welterweight coming up in weight to fight the recognized name fighter here. However, I mean, that's about as similar as they get. I'll break down eventually later on through the podcast on why they're really not the same, other than just, difference in weight. And, well, at least not the difference in weight, but, it's a welterweight coming up. And it's also a disappointing announcement at that. So, yes, Triple G, Brook, also on the rundown is Kovalev versus Chilemba. Post-fight thoughts. Kovalev earning the unanimous decision over Chilemba. Many, including myself, thought that he would get the knockout here, but didn't, and we'll talk about that too, at least on how everything played out. And Manny Pacquiao, updates on his return to the ring after supposedly retiring after his third fight with Timothy Bradley. Some more updates on him, and that the Broner possibility is now foregone. So let's jump into it with the shocking announcement that was Triple G versus Brook, Special K, IBF welterweight champion versus the unified middleweight champion, Gennady Golovkin. Now, we last spoke when negotiations were at a standstill between Brook and Jesse Vargas as far as maybe the purse that Brook was hoping to land in that fight, and also with Triple G's side at least on an agreement with Eddie Hearn's promotional team on getting the fight set up with Chris Eubank Jr. Now, at that point in time, it seemed that Chris Eubank Sr. Was at least trying to work out some final niches, at least some things to get, his approval of on this contract. It's we had left off when Chris Eubanks Jr. had talked about him not seeing the contract yet from Eddie Hearn, so which is why he had not signed the contract yet. Turns out, through Eddie Hearn's numerous interviews onto how this Brook fight came about, was the fact that Chris Eubank Sr. was extremely difficult to work with and was making demands for things that just were not uncalled for, but just unlike any other fighter that Matchroom, Eddie Hearn's promotional company, or team, whatever, it's pretty much unprecedented when it came to what the demands that Chris Eubank Sr. was asking for in this fight. He said he's never gave, these type of powers with Anthony Joshua, who's his current biggest fighter, and Carl Froch, who, of course, knocked out George Groves at Wembley. He will not let us forget. Now, it's, of course, there's a lot of anger, and it seems to be, it keeps coming about, and I feel so repetitive when it comes to this statement of, obviously we're upset with the opposition that, is in front of it, or at least official, when it comes to Golovkin, but the same anger is never applied to the guys that are not taking this fight. There's so many instances where there's someone mooching some type of headlines that they can get off Triple G's name, and when it comes down to actually signing a paper or making the offer, they're ghosts. Or it's, well, now I need about a year and a half to, to actually get ready for Golovkin. It's like, who when are we going to take the blame for these guys who aren't ready now to fight? Like, what the hell? I mean, that can only really be an excuse for Canelo to get away with, right? Because, he's younger, even though he has about 10 years boxing experience, more than Gennady Golovkin does, at least as far as a professional career. That can only really work for Canelo. But Danny Jacobs and Billy Joe Saunders have, I'll separate Billy Joe more or less with, this is more of a financial understanding, or a misunderstanding, should I say. But Danny Jacobs, to say he needs a year and a half, like, you are full blown into your prime. What other skill set could you be applying, or what are you lacking now that you'll gain within the next year that you'll be ready to face Gennady Golovkin? Like, that's uncalled for. So, yeah, I would like to see a little bit more anger toward those guys. And in this instance, it seemed that Chris Eubank Jr. really was kind of left out of the loop and left his father in control of everything. And in the end, he looks like a fool, just the same way that Canelo Alvarez did once he said that Mexicans don't fuck around, or some of my Mexican friends, they'll say it didn't actually translate to that, or something saying motherfucker. I don't know. But the point is, you called Triple G out and vacated your title 10 days later. So, it's almost the same way here with Junior. And unfortunately, those father and son, relationships especially through boxing, can get really tricky, and it's going to be hard for him to try to find a voice, him being Junior, to find a voice for himself and going further into his career, at least try to set up better matchups for himself. But let's also not be, diluted here. and thinking that Chris Eubank Jr. was not going to get his ass whooped, because it was pretty damn evident that that was going to happen. So let's not really stray too far from that and be, so let down. It just would have been another ass whooping, and then afterward, some type of discredit poured onto that performance. So, let's not act completely heartbroken that this fight didn't happen. But like I said again, well, actually, let's talk about how not Chris Eubank, but Kell Brook actually got put into this. It seemed that really this was more like a last-ditch, bid for Eddie Hearn in a way, because it seemed that Gennady, for what the reasons I've just mentioned before, Chris Eubank really just in reality was going to be able to get his ass kicked in this fight. And really what it was for Golovkin was to expand his brand into the English crowd, because obviously that's where the most heavily attended crowds are these days. That's where a lot of the buzz is. So it seemed that Golovkin was really keen on doing, or at least fighting, in England. So last ditch effort by Eddie Hearn to just throw out, hey, look, Kell Brook looks like he's desperate. And a friend of mine on Facebook pointed this out, and this headline totally went over my head because I completely forgot about it, was the fact that Kell Brook did, and it was actually this year, I believe, Kell Brook did in fact call out Triple G on wanting to, at least stating that he wanted to fight him sometime soon. So, with that when Eddie Hearn says, or Kell Brook said, when Eddie Hearn asked him if he wanted to do it, he jumped on the opportunity to do it. So I totally believe that. So, at least here, and this is where, of course the comparisons for Canelo Khan come in. But, there's a lot of, different aspects to this whole situation, with one being that Kell Brook is not infamous for a chin. He's actually a pretty solid fighter, and it doesn't seem, at least to my memory, I can't really recall of a time of him being seriously hurt. Of course, I'm sure there's someone gonna do some research of that for me, and I think I want to say of like some type of Carson fight, maybe, but yeah. So it's not a terribly chinny fighter who's obviously going to be thrown to the lambs in this situation. However, he is facing the most, and I don't care how people don't like this name, but he definitely is the most feared fighter in boxing right now. And Canelo, for the numbers that he can pull in, you can't say there's the reputation there of being totally afraid. It was really just in the instance for Khan of because of how chinny he was, but there was also the fact that he could also outbox Canelo. Here in this situation, you have Kell Brook, who's I would say a slightly skilled fundamental fighter. There's really nothing, just like Chris Eubank Jr., there's nothing he does really, I say nothing that really stands out about him as far as what he does really well. He's pretty damn sound. That's about it. But certain things I say like he does fight well in and out. He is pretty versatile in that way. He does like to use his strength if he has it over you. And I know people are gonna hate me saying it, but because of maybe the repetitiveness about it. But I mean, he is a big welterweight. Nonetheless, you gotta imagine, at least think about how he was looking going into his fights. He looked huge against Porter, and this is around the weight that most of these guys, at least 160, being that it's usually a pretty comfortable walk around weight for these guys. So, with Khan really having to elevate his speed up with weight, Kell Brook won't be so focused on that, I would say, in this fight, because he's not really a speed fighter. And speaking of speed, I pointed out in a little film study I did on my Facebook of Kell Brook is that something that could help him going into this fight is, of course, him being used to a quicker speed of welterweights, and maybe that could help him avoid some Golovkin punches. The unfortunate thing about that though is, and maybe it won't make an effect, but even to the extent of how he reacts to welterweight punches, is that he gets hit a lot trying to slip. Even some pretty slow guys in the welterweight division, which in a way are still somewhat faster than Gennady Golovkin. So, it isn't a total whitewash, I guess what I say is the difference between, Canelo and Khan, but, people are overreacting a bit to this, being a little bit harsh on it than it really needs to be. Yes, it's unfortunate that he's fighting him, but it's not going to be a total sucky fight. You're still going to watch, or at least to see the validity of his win or maybe defeat, So, you're going to go watch it anyway. Be real with yourself. On to Kovalev, Sergey Kovalev, who defeated Isaac Chilemba this past Monday on HBO. It was rebroadcasted at 10 o'clock, and I believe the live time was around 1:30. I believe I had just started to catch the live feed around 2 o'clock, so I was about a good 6 rounds into the fight by the time I started watching. And what I was how I was reminded was on Facebook. There's a friend of mine who like to do a little live update on it round by round, and what I was being told is that Kovalev looked a little worried, or at least worrying, should I say. If you're watching him, it's concerning seeing him eat so many jabs, and I would say lacked effectiveness. But by the time I started watching, Kovalev was just kind of starting to pour it on a bit, and actually got his knockdown in the 7th round. And from there he was doing pretty good work, but then eventually when I watched the fight entirely, I was able to get a full sense of everything. And for those who didn't watch, it was surprisingly closer than what I had imagined. I'm pretty sure you guys did too. And there was even rounds where Chilemba was outlanding Kovalev, which is really concerning. Of course, during the broadcast, they were mentioning how Isaac Chilemba was At least Sergey Kovalev had talked about him choosing Chilemba because he was a moving defensive fighter, and that was their way of preparing for Andre Ward. And also, Sergey Kovalev had mentioned in a post-fight interview of how nervous he was actually fighting back in Russia, which is strange. He said he's actually more comfortable fighting in the United States. I'm not sure how much that really rang true. There was also him talking about how he was sick during camp. So, he's already, I guess, feeling... And even in that interview, the post-fight interview, he was saying he wasn't happy with how he performed. He at least wasn't happy on how close it was. But... I'm hearing some podcasts now coming out. Even some of the guys on the Boxing Voice were talking about how, who really saw it. He said, or at least they were talking about the overstatement of how good Chilemba was in this fight. And I said last week that outside of Kovalev, Stevenson, and Ward, Chilemba's right there. So, and I even mentioned about how this was the better fight between Ward and Kovalev as far as preparing a fight. Chilemba is a definitely more live body in the ring and definitely coming to fight. And, there's people that I think that aren't really seeing that. It was... I like to think it was a collective mix of really Kovalev kind of overlooking Chilemba and probably gassing out early and was having hard times to, deal with the fact that, he was going to have to definitely put some work in to try to go for that knockout. And on top of that, just a flat-out good performance from Chilemba. Unfortunately, outside the jab was really the best punch he could offer at that, or at least at that fight. And had he had some type of pop, and there were some good shots that he was landing. Had he had maybe just a little bit more legitimate power, he definitely would have had Kovalev concerned. So, like I said, I believe it's a mix of both. Now people are going a little crazy, saying now they give Kovalev no chance against Ward. Listen, it's premature. Yes, Kovalev fought a shitty fight, but like I said, Chilemba really, had a performance of his career, and the preparation for this fight would surely not have Kovalev in that status. So, it's a number of things, and of course, it goes without mention, styles make fights. So, take that for what you want. Now Manny Pacquiao, who's been in at least in more of my mainstream sports feeds of late, simply just off his announcement of coming back. Now, it really wasn't to anyone's surprise that he wasn't going to be retiring after the Timothy Bradley fight. However, the names that were being floated around, one primarily Adrian Broner, last week was being talked about, and especially with now the new joint working relationship of Bob Arum and Al Heyman, how easy the fight would be able to be made because of the relationship, like I said. It was announced this week that the Adrian Broner fight will not take place. simply off the fact that Adrian Broner had priced himself out. Adrian Broner went on to his Twitter saying, fuck you, Bob, pay me what I deserve. And, of course, brought it back to the money. Wasn't really specific with anything, saying, he deserved more. Which, there might have been a reason because Al Heyman, but Bob Arum came out today saying that, Adrian Broner was asking for more money than Pacquiao was getting. And basically that, what he was settling for was more than they could even offer to make the fight even take place. So they just, Bob Arum specifically said he was pretty angry about it because, of course, he was able to, try to work with Al Heyman on this. And he said they, had several talks about getting this fight together, and Al Heyman's giving him an offer, and Adrian Broner still refusing. So, a lot of people are going to mention, Terrence Crawford, or maybe someone he could fight. Bob Arum had mentioned before that he would let the winner of Terrence Crawford versus Victor Postal, the winner would face Manny Pacquiao. But that seems to be slipping away, and it's now looking more likely for Jesse Vargas, who unfortunately fell out of position with his fight. It's looking more likely that he's the favorite to get that next fight. But as far as a fan's point of view, of course, you definitely want to see Pacquiao versus Terrence Crawford. And while Bob Arum definitely goes to profit off of that, it's Manny who doesn't want to go out like that. That's there's a high risk with low reward in that fight. But if he's in a humanitarian sense of life, then he would sure see the reason why, passing down that torch, especially, being a part of the top rank fraternity. So, other than that, of course, Manny's looking to get that second Floyd fight, but it actually could be more likely than anything now that Floyd's also mentioning, as much as I tried not to talk about, him in his podcast, but he's been talking about coming back. Of course, it's only stating that he'll only make that comeback for the right money. So he's looking to try to make, 9 figures, I believe he said, 8 or 9 figures. So if he's being realistic, he knows the only person he's going to be able to make that money with is Manny Pacquiao. So, in all honesty, I did think Manny looked really good in that Bradley fight. Good enough to make you kind of want to see him again. And I know I shouldn't want to, but you kind of do. Because what I believe through that Mayweather fight, I think people kind of overstated, the state of, Manny's physicality at that time, or at least his time now. Like, he's not at a tremendous drop-off yet. He's still fast. He still hits hard. His foot movement's still there, and it was really the only thing that really came into question through the past 2 years really was his killer instinct. And, he proved that it really didn't go anywhere in this last Bradley fight. And who's to say what he really lacked in the Mayweather fight, obviously due to the surgery that he had during there. So you can't really state on that looking like, it'd be a fight where he's showing some terrible aging problems. Man, I think we're done here. Music's going, so we got to be done here. But this is the whole preparation I do for these podcasts. I really do take the time to write some certain thoughts down, the info, and try to organize it before I do this. But really, I didn't do that at all for this one. I just remembered I made certain check notes I wanted to do, or at least what I wanted to cover, and do it. Because these past 2 days, I was really just trying to do, like I mentioned in the last podcast, trying to launch this YouTube channel with other videos than just a weekly podcast. And that's the Hands of Fire Great Debates. What I was working on this week is the Hands of Fire Great Debates top 5 fighters of all time. Now, and that's pretty much what I've been doing, really, is working on this list and researching all the fighters, all the runner-ups, anybody I could think of to put there. So, that's why I'm kind of was just looking to just knock this shit out, get it out there, and really go back to back. Because right after this, directly after this recording, I'm going to be doing the Great Debates. So be on the lookout for that. Enjoy your guys' week. Deontay Wilder fights Chris Arreola this week. So be on the lookout for that. There's definitely a good chance with Chris Arreola. Always look at the brawl. Definitely has a good chance, even though he has no reason being in that ring. Especially just based off past performances and issues. Nothing against him personally, of course. But that's it for me, guys. I'm out of here. Like I said, directly right after this, I'm recording the other episode. So, peace. Good night. Whatever.